We're recording.
Yeah. Sam, thank you. Good morning, everyone. People will be joining as I chat with you this morning. I'm going to do a new version of the conversation talk I've been having. This is about the fourth or fifth version that I've built. I have this habit of being an old lecturer who always redid his lecture notes and created new lectures after every lecture. Nowadays I have the luxury of all of this multimedia, so I can connect my lecture to unique slides. That's what I'm going to do now. I want you to look at this title slide. It's a little bit different than what I've used before because I've added the critical word in bold dark red, conversation. I put this slide up originally as a relaxation slide saying imagine yourself on my dock staring at the shoreline and it's a beautiful fall day and how does it feel, what do you think about, and we do an imagination exercise. I've decided this is a conversation exercise because this reminds me of a conversation that I had with myself. Today's talk is going to be all about conversation, how to get it going, and how to use it to promote well-being through the community. Conversation I had with myself was that I got out onto the dock, and those of you who know me know that I have been overcoming joint disorders and replacements and fusions for quite some time, and at this particular day in October I had done what I had done previously, which was to use my four-wheeler to go about 150 feet from my house to the lakefront so that I could enjoy a view of the lake. And I had gotten off of my four-wheeler and made sure I carefully walked onto the dock and not fall in the water. And I was rewarded with this view of fall color. And I remembered that I enjoy fall color greatly. I was taking pride in the fact that I had actually walked out on the dock, which I had been afraid to do since I had poor balance, but I had improved my balance. And I told myself that I would go back to that spot many times. And now I can go out there without a four-wheeler. I can walk out with the dog. We can stand on the dock and look at the lake any time of the year we wish to. That's the story. And the point of the story is that stories start conversations. So if you want to start a conversation, one of the first things you should check is how you listen to yourself, how you speak to yourself. Self-talk is good. How do you propose to change the rest of the world if you deny yourself the luxury of talking to yourself? Let's move on. This is the slide you've seen before. I won't discuss it in detail, but I will tell you that when you do a group presentation, it's handy to get them involved by asking them questions. It's handy to not have a lot of words on the screen. Lots of words get in the way of a conversation with a group, in my opinion. And so I use this slide to start a conversation about something that goes from +10 to -10. And those of you who know what I've been talking about realize that what I've been talking about is well-being. And people go, oh, that's a nice word. And I say, yes, you'll notice there's a +10 to -10. What do you think is on the other end of that two-sided arrow? And some people guess well, and some people can't imagine what the other word is. So I bring up the word. The word is misery, and I'm talking to a group of people who have miseries in the city of Superior. And so they go, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I talk a little bit about the misery well-being 10-point scale. And I tell them that if you really want to get a conversation going with folks who you'd like to help, it's a bad idea to use terms that sound a lot like clinical psychology terms. So I say, yeah, you have to have another set of terms so as not to offend people. At least that's true up here. And then I bring up the flourishing floundering. And we talk briefly about the fact that floundering is a kind of amusing description of somebody like a fish out of water. Now, that allows me to say two more things. One is that well-being and misery are not clinical diagnostic terms. This is not about telling you about depression, anxiety. We're not going to do clinical psychology on you. We're not going to do hours of therapeutic training. And we don't want you to be defensive. And guess what people are when you bring up the words misery and well-being? They're defensive. Instead, I say, you know, even flourishing and floundering aren't, while they're better, they're still not good enough. So I invented a word to use for up here. And I would suggest that in a conversation you think about doing the same thing and be careful in your word choices. The word that I chose for up here is the word rusty. And I say, you know, the community's kind of, we got a little bit rusty here, haven't we? Now, you know, this part of the world is called the Rust Belt, and partly because of the depressions that have hit this neck of the woods, the whole upper Midwest, the iron industry, the iron, what's the color of iron? Rust colored in its raw form. So when you use the word rust and Rust Belt and Iron Range, which is, the Iron Range is a place that is near, about 30, 40 miles near Superior and Duluth. That word resonates, and then when you say rusty, you can then say, we're kind of rusty, and it would be neat if we could polish ourselves up and become shiny. So I actually will use the third term, those terms, rusty, shiny. Then I do one other thing. I use that. I point out that we don't have a middle, which is a neutral spot, a little bit of high and a little bit of low. Neutral is not neutral on a lot of emotional scales. In this case, neutral really refers to empty, and I say it with a certain amount of emphasis because there's always somebody who has picked the neutral point, and I'll find out, anybody picked the neutral point? I will say, are you empty? Are you totally disengaged? Are you indifferent? Have you become so biased, so cynical that you are completely detached and empty of all feeling about the way things are around here? That's a pretty provocative question to ask, and that's okay because I'm trying to start a conversation in a group, and I want to start that conversation with words that the people have, not words that I have. I will even go so far as to say, okay, what are the words you would put on the misery end of the scale? What are the words you would put on the well-being end of the scale? All of those things I can do with this simple diagram to promote a conversation about well-being. It works. Now, I'm telling you stuff that I've been test driving, and I'm telling you about things that work. So now, this would be normally, here's the agenda, and it would be bullet points, and you would tell people, you know, and they would read these words, and then you would say, all right, I'll be clever with you, and I will see if I can bring these words up in some sort of order, and I bring up the words, and then we're going to talk about who is in here, who is here. We're going to talk about the 4 obstacles to getting anything sold or done. It turns out that in this neck of the woods, the money obstacles are not the issues because well-being is not something that you have to have millions of dollars to develop. Turns out what you really have to have is time, and time is a critical factor in this neck of the woods and probably everywhere. I don't have the time to concentrate on my own well-being. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, that was said to me. Well, okay, do you have enough time to live your remaining life and die at a convenient point in time? You know, it's ridiculous, but it's what they think. So I stop on that for a little bit and I move on. Well, how much will it cost? Well, I don't really know. It's not going to cost much, but it'll cost something eventually. What are the benefits? What are the losses? Those of you who know goal planning system realize that I just lifted that right off of there. Now, I ask people to talk to me about what can you gain and what can you avoid by building well-being in a community. Okay. Now, this gets more conversation started than those other ones. How much will it cost to stay the way we are right now? That's a powerful question. Yeah, if we do what we keep doing, we're going to end up where we're headed. That's the underlying point, and people get serious with you when they answer that seriously. Okay, now I say fine. Now what have I done? I am telling them that I'm going to have this conversation with them for the remainder of time in the session, and these are the points that we will cover, and I am having the conversation as I'm covering the points quickly. So I will say, well, we're going to have to learn what flourish and well-being are. And you might want to ask, why in the world do you have two things? Why can't you just flourish? Why can't you just have well-being? Seligman, our good Martin Seligman, author of Flourish, pointed out that if you just concentrate on those things that make you help you flourish, you will concentrate on states of optimism and states of happiness, states of positive feeling, and a few other things. All of those come and go. There's a transient quality about them. And if you're trying to promote something, you want to promote something that has permanence. Flourish is absolutely essential, but it doesn't have the permanence that well-being has. So flourish helps you build well-being. You can't have a state of well-being if you haven't been flourishing. Likewise, if you have a poor state of well-being, it makes it harder for you to flourish. So there's a complex interrelationship, and we have to pay attention to both factors if we want to do anything good in a community of well-being. Okay, I've got the conversation going with you now, I hope. You don't get to talk to me because we're recording this. Now, about this point in time, I believe that they're going to question, how the heck are you going to do that? So I bring up the where's the how, as in where's the beef? How does this thing play? Okay, and that's a main topic. Here's the point. This slide is setting up expectations in my mind, and hopefully in their mind, of what we should prepare to think about. Okay. And preparing or having an expectancy of what to think and talk about is absolutely critical to having a conversation that goes somewhere. Okay. Now, so we're going to say finally the big word, start what kind of conversation? This is my emphasis. This is not in any of Seligman's books as far as I can see. I realize that all the techniques that we do, LMI does, are all that are talked about in happiness, in optimism, in flourishing. They all are based on people speaking and listening to other people. So we get this. We get the concept, the conversation. We were tremendously affected by the founder of the company, good old Paul J. Meyer, may he rest in peace. He was a master of conversation. Right? We've had stories about how this guy would go into a room and start having conversations with people. He taught us how to be conversive. Some of us wrestle with being conversive because our nature is to be reserved, quiet and introverted. Some of us are so extroverted we can talk a lot but we can't have a conversation. So conversation is a key concept, and it has to fit the disposition you have inside you and your personality, and it has to fit the dynamics of the situation. This is not easy stuff, but we have been practicing being conversant with others and conversant with ideas. All our programs allow us to be conversant, and because we're so practiced in it, we are experts at promoting conversations about well-being, because we know the keys, we know the drills, we know the skills, and we have programs to assist us. I hope I said that accurately. If I didn't, too late. We're going to go on to something else now. We're going to go on to, oh, well, what kind of conversation? How about idle conversation? Absolutely not. I bring this up because, geez, we have conversation going on all the time. I can go into any bar in the city of Superior, and any afternoon, any evening, weekends, weekdays, and there are plenty of people in there having conversations. Are they the conversations that promote well-being? No. Are they the conversations that help people feel temporarily optimistic and happy? Maybe. But from a permanent standpoint, those conversations I call idle. They fill time so that you can get to the end of your life, while saying things to other people. But they don't accomplish well-being. What do I mean by idle conversations? Let's have some things. Well, I'm sorry. We have to say we're not going to do idle conversations. We have to ask the questions that start a positive conversation, and that is what happens next. We do start conversations by promoting Perma, all right? Positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. You know that mantra is said again and again, and it is very powerful, and it will help us talk to others about how they feel, how they think, what they've done, and what matters most to them. That's what is in the Perma model. Now, if you want to pause and shut me up for a moment and let you talk, I want to ask you, what conversation tools are your favorite ones? What conversation tools do you use with your clients that really work for you? We are the experts. We know the stuff. Sam, would you sort of open up the mic and call on people, please?
Okay. Well, who would like to be first? Okay, I see we have a lot of people just jumping at the bit here. Lane, how about you?
Okay. When I talk to people, I first go in and I just kind of have, like you said, idle conversation, asking little things about their own personal business, like we've been taught. What's your business? How long have you been in the business? This, that, and those type of things before you get into personal stuff, and then go into who I am, and that's it. And then I start my questioning, and that's I try not to get more than 5 minutes of that in there, because if I go longer than that, then that seems to be I find out that that's the way the whole conversation goes to. It's just kind of a conversation and talking, and it doesn't get me down to the subject of what I'm trying to accomplish.
Okay. May I ask you this question?
Sure.
Do you have a favorite question that gets you down to that topic that you're there to talk about?
Yes, I do.
What would it be?
It is, what is your, I won't say biggest, but what is a problem, or not problem, but what is the thing that's really bothering you, or what is your biggest area that you're having to work on right now?
Great. Okay. We better let somebody else have a chance. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Kiefer.
Yes, Sam. um, so the question to me is, what do I use the conversation to target in on finding out what people want and need? Is that what you're asking me, Dr. Al?
I'm asking you, in order to get the conversation moving in a direction that will produce a result, what's your favorite technique, conversation question?
What are your greatest concerns? What are your greatest challenges? I try to stay away from negative verbiage, and try is probably the operative word there, Sam. But usually I'll take the high road and say, what are your concerns? What areas are you not making the progress in that you'd like to make?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's not conservative.
No, that's true. But
Yeah.
it is worded such that people do answer that. What areas are you? If they can answer that and say they don't have any, I don't know that they're going to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make progress that you would like and are capable. So.
Uh-oh. John, you're breaking up some for reasons that are beyond my control. How about if we get another answer from another person and let you...
That'd be just fine.
Okay, Norma?
Okay.
I've been using, it depends on who I'm talking to, so it could be business related, like I'll talk about how's your business this week with summer, is it affecting your business? If it's somebody I know personally, I'll ask, do you have any plans for a family vacation if they're married and I know they have kids, or do you have plans to travel this summer? Those are the kind of things I've been using recently.
Good. And none of them are, they're pointed questions, as it were. They aren't designed to, I call how the weather, how's the weather?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, it's not that kind of question. Great. Thank you.
Okay, Roxana?
Well, I'm thinking of people I met yesterday. One of them is a client I'm working with mostly one-on-one. She actually belongs to a group, but we're working one-on-one. And my first question was, how was your week? And in the morning, I had a session with a group of people, and we started out with, tell me something positive that happened since the last time we met. So basically, questions that gets them going.
Did you say, tell me something awful? Is that what you said?
No, I said, tell me something positive.
Oh, thank you. You broke up on that word, and and I was puzzled by, wow, that's a powerful question.
No, something positive that happened since we last met.
Okay. Yeah, before we go on, I do want to let you know, Roxana, I do have that report, and when we're done with this morning's session, I will fire it over to you.
Thank you.
Before noon. You're welcome.
Okay,
Sam.
Pete, are you there by chance? No, okay. Let's see, one more person. Sam, how about you? Oh, yes, yeah. I do. I have two items. Depending on what it is, many times I'll ask people that I know, friends, what have you been working on lately? Simply because I want to know what they're working on, what they're doing. And another one is if I'm like down at the Baylor Club and I'm introduced to somebody who has a business, I'll ask them, so how is business? And that way I can get some idea as to what it is that they do, how it's going, and see if there's anything there that would open up in order to expand on the conversation. And we are out of people. So it's back to you.
Oh, I'll give you my favorite question. You've already heard is, I'm usually invited in to have a first meeting with a prospective client. So I can get beyond the how's business, how's the weather. They know there's a reason for me being there. And so I will start with a bit more provocative, perhaps. If I'm any good at what I do, what will I get done for you that will really be helpful? Yeah, they laugh because I question my own sanity and competence. But then I said, okay, what if I'm an idiot? What won't you get done? Well, if I'm good, what will you get done? How can I help you? So I found those to be pointed enough to get a little startled response and then get to some honest communication. And I limit myself to a 20-minute first interview. You know how I love to ramble. So in 20 minutes, I had better get things pointed and directed to further the conversation later or to say thank you very much, have a great life. So that's my, now, that wasn't so hard for us, was it? There we go. We understand the questions and the power that they have for us to do our business. Idle talk and, more importantly, negative talk. It turns out psychology has a lot of discussion and actually quite a bit of information about these things. It's a book called Games People Play, ancient book written in the 1950 by, oh boy, I always forget his name. Eric Berne, there it is. Eric Berne, Games People Play. You may know this topic as transactional analysis, is what the TA is for. And here are some of the games. Ain't It Awful? I had a game of Ain't It Awful break out in the first presentation I did of this topic, and we just simulated it because it's what people were saying to the director of the Business Improvement District. They were playing Ain't It Awful, and she hated that game. So we had to talk about ways to get out of that Ain't It Awful game. If it weren't for you, now this is not a conversation. The point about games is that people aren't having conversations. They're saying things for hidden purposes. If it weren't for you, I'd have been a rich man by now. Okay. How about the why don't you? And then they pause, and you answer, and then they say, yes, but. Or the problem is, okay, I'm a PhD after all, so I should be able to analyze what you say and beat it to death so that you think I didn't hear what you were really talking about. It's a terrible game. I used to play it a lot. Let's you and him fight. Let's start a conversation which antagonizes the third person and the second person, and then you stand out of the way. That's an interesting game. It's not conversation. It's a strategy to be stupid. I'm only trying to help you. So please listen to me. I'm only trying to help you. I'm going to be honest with you. Oh, really? Yeah, now, if you have to say that, more than likely the person who heard it is going, well, what have you been up to this point? Okay. Now I've got, this is the one that always gets everybody's attention and memory. Now I've got you SOB, where you converse and you're working a person into a corner and you finally nail them. You got them right where you want them. And at that point, you've played a game, we call it more politely, gotcha. Okay. Back in the early 1960s, you could call it, now I got you, SOB. There are a lot of games in communication, and our job is to use the good ones to have a good conversation, not one that is idle and pointless and goes into never, never land. Hope that made sense. And of course, I want to always tell you that there are two things you should not allow to happen in a conversation. Whining, all right, and I will show you this, and I won't say the word because, of course, I can't be, profane, but we don't need a lot of that stuff either. So now, what we do need are topics that will promote a discussion that will lead to a desire for change and a promotion of, in this case, well-being. So we do what is Perma, because Perma are conversation starters. We talk about, okay, positive emotion. How you feel? Yes, we do that. That's a conversation starter, especially if you don't feel so good. What are you doing right now? What are you engaged in that you are excited about? Okay. Who are you working with? Okay. And what are you doing now to help him or her improve, or help him or her be better? Or I didn't need that timer, did I? No. I'm going to digress just for a moment. My iPhone, I'm trying to use it as a timer, and I really do mean the word try, because I have a terrible habit of losing track of time, and the timer goes dark, right? So I can't look at it and have it tell me how many minutes I have left, how many minutes I've burned. When I start on these lectures, in the old days, I had a clock on the wall and I had a bell. So, and I had kids that knew how to be restless. They were conditioned to be restless within the last 10 to 5 minutes of a lecture. So I had all these clues, and I could just talk without paying attention to the clock, know what I was talking about, have it all memorized. Life was good. I don't have some of those clues now, so I still have the lectures, but my time management is a topic that I have to work on. Right. So now that the clock is back, right, what are you doing that really makes you feel satisfied and find that life is worth living? That's the meaning question. Finally, of course, what have you gotten done? What are you most proud of? These are good things for good conversations, because you can lead your way into any other kind of topic. How can I help you? What's working? What's not working? Who is on your side? I mean, you can ask all sorts of questions if you have accomplished an emotional connection and engagement, if you are forming a relationship and you are talking about stuff that has meaning to that person who just might be your next client. You always have to think about with them, what's in it for me? Because you're listening to me and you're probably saying, well, that's nice of him, but what's in it for me? The takeaways, this is just a short list. Something that goes beyond optimism and happiness. Okay. Something called grit and resilience that we all need, that will turn trauma into growth. It's ironic that I'm having this presentation today after the events in Dallas and elsewhere, Minneapolis, where policemen and citizens are killing each other. And it is baffling. It is disturbing. We have what do we call it now? A national conversation. We have to have a different conversation. We have to start a conversation between people who are shooting each other. Conversation has become a critical concept. And we need to learn how to help them help themselves. Oh. Another one that I will go on after this slight digression. We also hear that violence is now the norm. That was immediately after the Dallas shootings of the 5 cops and woundings of 7 or 8 others. We need to address the underlying cause of this, which is violence. If we polish the problem on its edges and circumstances and do not address the core issue of violence, you will not change things at all. Okay, well, well-being, by the way, is something, that if you want to move away from violence, you can say to yourself, well, okay, if I can stop the violence, what do I do to replace it? Because remember, human nature abhors a vacuum. If you take something away, like a reason to be violent, someone else is going to take its place. And it would be nice if you could help that something to be a positive feature, such as well-being, optimism. And it's not only a nice thing to do, but we are learning more and more about the health benefits of well-being. And it's a powerful message to look at somebody, as I did yesterday morning when I made this a version of this presentation to one of the Rotary clubs here in Superior. I said, all right, you're in a Rotary club, Rotary promotes well-being. Would you invite somebody to join a Rotary club by saying to them, participating in this club actually will promote your longevity depending on how much you want to get involved in it. The more you get involved in this organization, the more positive things you do for yourself and for others, and the strange effect of that is your life gets a little longer. Not to mention that you just might be physically and mentally fit along the way. These are things that are benefits to you that you're doing not because they're benefits to you, it just comes. You are helping other people. So, Perma, it's good for you. Now, let's go on. Well, let's see, that's a blank slide. We want a blank slide. I might possibly be near the end of my slideshow. That'd be really strangely crazy, wouldn't it? Now, at this point, I've tossed a series of ideas to an audience in a short period of time. They are undoubtedly puzzled, uncertain, possibly confused, could be even negative, could be irritated that I brought up the topic. But for sure, they don't have it all clear and settled in their minds. So expect to help them. See if I can help you now. If I hit, there you go. The easiest thing to say is, this is the source that I'm using. This is what has gained prominence through the U.S. and through foreign countries. This is a book about a how-to book, not a book of some crazy theory. So if you want to engage yourself in the topic of flourishing and how conversations affect it, there is a book as a resource to you. Remember, that's the key word. Promoting authentic, optimistic, real, adult conversations. They're not easy. And they kind of go, yeah, well, okay, look, I'm just going to give you a couple of hints about a good conversation. Asking what went well, the gratitude exercise. That starts a conversation that's positive. How about the signature strength exercise? Signature strengths is a very cute concept. We can figure out our signature strengths from profiles. If you don't know what your signature strengths are, send me your profile and I'll do a chat with you about what I see. But we can figure out signature strengths, and also, more importantly, we can figure out what limits those strengths or governs those strengths. That's a positive talk. Oh, positive talk. How are you doing? That's a question. How are you? Right? How's it going? Those are those casual questions. Up here in the Northland, most of the times the answers sound like, I'm okay. You know, it's winter time. Okay. I'm bored. Thank God it's Friday. That doesn't say anything other than negative. Or well, it's Monday, or it's hump day. Okay, now those are all negative self-talk things. You want to listen to those, and when somebody asks you how you're doing, you don't want to contribute to that conversation. You want to say, like, I say this all the time, I am excellent and getting better. I feel fantastic. People have finally gotten used to the fact that I say that almost always. And if I don't say something like that, like if I say, I'm okay, the smart ones realize that I just sent out a call for help. Okay. Active constructive responding, that is something that is discussed in the book. You can have passive and destructive responding, which is bad. You want to avoid that. It's so easy to have destructive responses. You have to learn how not to do that. Let's see, do I have any other? Okay. Dealing with negative emotions. You're going to get them, so you better have a way to accept them and address them. If you don't, your conversation is going to suffer sooner or later. And with all else fails, learn what that Perma is. Remember, Perma is teachable, so don't hesitate to figure out how to teach it. People will learn it. I'm discovering that I'm going to have a strong foothold in the teaching system at the university if I play my cards right. And I'm looking forward to using that foothold to promote well-being in the community. So don't be afraid to teach it. Don't be afraid to learn it. And of course, since we're all in LMI and since this is science and not psychobabble, we understand that this is measurable. And if you do not measure what's going on with the people you are helping, you can't prove that you've changed anything. So we understand the value of measurement. And believe me, there are folks, when you're working in a whole community, who are used to information, but they don't understand that there is so much information now that it is an overabundance, makes a whole lot of noise. It never gets converted into anything that we would call intelligence. We have a lot of stuff next to nothing because we don't know how to make the conversions. Oh, we know how because we're working with LMI and we've been trained in that for a long time, don't we? Aren't we? Yes. Let's see what else I have here. Oh, yes, of course. Positive motivation. You've discovered it. If you haven't discovered it, you're still struggling. I hope you discover it. The people you work with have not discovered it. They think they have been conditioned to use negative motivation, and that doesn't work in the long run. So be sure you know how to discover positive motivation. Okay, and of course you can't start it with a story and not end with a story. I enjoyed this car. You've seen it once before if you listen to me on another one of these presentations. My 1960 Austin Healey 3000. Here's the story, and I will end with this. I was in a fraternity at Stanford. The fraternity president and I had a habit of going down to a winery and liquor store just outside of Palo Alto, where his fiancée was working. He married into this family that had a winery. What a smart guy. We would go down there on Sunday. We would grab a bottle of wine, and we would grab a couple of steaks, and then he came back from deer hunting with a mule deer, and so we would go back to the fraternity and get out 2 of his mule deer steaks and cook them and have the wine and the mule deer for our Sunday dinner because the cook wasn't there to cook on Sunday in the fraternity. When we went down to this wine store, this liquor store, one Sunday, and in the parking lot sat this red Austin Healey 3000. And this would be 1963, so it would be a 3-year-old vehicle. I saw it and I said, oh, I got to have that. And I took action. I called the guy. He told me what he wanted for it, which was pretty reasonable. And I negotiated how I could get the money, and I had some timely help from my father, which was always appreciated. And I acquired that red Austin Healey while I was a junior at Stanford, and every moment that I had it, I loved it. It is such a positive recall for me. You can imagine it for your own best vehicle. So the call to action: do something, don't be shy, and when you get a call to action, enjoy the results. Oh, there's the. We'll stop there. We're going to get the slideshow ended. Okay. We can stop recording, I think.